Dr. Russell to bring in sort of an institutionalized point of view in terms of the institutions that he worked with and how they handle these issues of child abuse, any aspect of that. Okay, let's talk about it.
You know, Dr. Hammond, Dr. Russell, he mentioned about, nourishing the child. And, the Bible talks about fathers, provoke not your child to wrath, but bring him up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And as a young man, my first child was born when I was age 17. My oldest son, I was age 17 when he was born. Of course, I knew nothing about, child rearing and anything like that. And surely, some of my actions and behavior over the period of years of my life amounted to neglect, because a lot of aspects, even just the fact that I went to prison was a form of neglect of my children and everything. But I didn't know. I was taught that, the woman, she took care, she brought up the children, she took care of the children, made sure they had their needs. I never knew that the father had a more involved role in that process than what I thought. I'm thinking is, you go out, you make some money, you provide, you pay for stuff, you buy stuff, and of course, unfortunately, we got a court system that's relegating fathers to that situation, to that position as well, because they're saying you pay child support and spend, every other weekend with your child, and that's really not, sufficient, really, to raise a child. But that's what I grew up with, thinking, that it was a woman's role to do that, and it wasn't my role.
Man is the breadwinner.
Yeah, the breadwinner. Yeah.
So I think in a real sense, Dr. Russell, you would also say that many of us probably grew up in that confine, in that concept, with those concepts, especially if you didn't grow up with a silver spoon in your mouth, and et cetera. If you came from the other side, and which does not mean that you can't be neglected in a palace, but in a real sense, I think that we're more susceptible, in a real sense, poor folks are more susceptible to that than any other group. Is that, would you say that?
I would agree. We parent how we were parented. That's how it's passed on. It's through our point of reference is our own experience as a child, and we parent that same way until we know better. Growing up in a single parent home myself, if I didn't have, I have two sisters in my immediate family, and if their husbands, they took time to actually mentor for me what it was to be a man, and I watched them in their interaction with my sisters, and also my oldest sister, she's dead and gone. Her husband just died last year. They raised me from, for about 12 years of my life, so I had that dual family role, and my sister was at home, was stay-at-home mom, so to speak, and my brother-in-law went to work every day. He slayed the bear and brought him home for my sister to dress him. And so I learned from him what it was to be a man, but he also had a sense of connection with me, that he spent that time with me, not just paying the bills and putting food on the table and clothes on my back. He served as a
mentor to you in a real sense.
He mentored me, exactly, in a real sense. And a lot of times the kids that come to us, they come to us without that. And so what we try to do tests to determine where they are. We can do, psychological testing, we can do psychoeducational testing, psychosexual testing to determine how deeply wounded they are in terms of their abuse, and so we'll know where to start at with working with this child. But one of the main things they need is for one person to take an interest in them and invest in their lives, because that one person can actually help them turn their corner. Because see, an abused child, in all probability, would become an abuser if you don't treat the abuse. A child who's been exposed to sexual abuse, their point of reference is it's okay to touch, to touch your child. So if you don't treat that, it's only going to be precipitated in their life, as they grow up into adulthood and as they have children. They will get into unhealthy, relationships. They'll get into promiscuous activity. It's a whole lot of things that can happen if you leave it untreated. But if you get them quick enough, early enough, know what's going on, see what the deficits are, and then build a program around those deficits, you can help stem the tide of abuse.
And one of the most important components, I would imagine, Pastor, is LOVE. You say that as long as a child understands that he or she is LOVE, respect, understanding, goodwill, and et cetera, then that can overcome all kinds of child abuse and neglect and et cetera. But that child has to understand that. Is that what we're saying here?
Unconditionally. You know, a lot of times abused children think they've got to do something to earn that love because they come from that environment. But you got to show them that you love them unconditionally. It doesn't come with a price tag. You don't have to be a rocket scientist in school for me to love you or to brag about, you know, brag about what you do. I'm going to love you regardless, you know. And so that child learns to be accepted for who they are, and they stop trying to fit into some other role to satisfy. Because a lot of times an abused child will try to fit a role because they think if I fit that role, I can avoid the abuse.
Wow. And of course, what I think we've got about, 3 more minutes before the end of this show today. And what would you like to leave in a real sense, Dr. Russell, with our audience this morning on how they might be able to better communicate and better work with their children? But not only with their children, but how they might also work with other children as well.
I think one of the things I'd like to leave with everybody is we are prone by nature to react to negative situations. The child acts out, then we react to that negative acting out. What I would like to recommend is that as adults, that we try to catch children doing good. You know, be observant enough to see them when they're doing something right and compliment them for what they've done right. You would be surprised how much that does to their self-esteem. Especially if they're coming from environments where they're told they're wrong, everything they do is wrong, you know. And it doesn't have to be the parent that catches that child doing good. It could be a teacher. It could be, you know, a social worker. It could be just the pastor of the church. It could be a deacon in the church, you know, because that whole village mentality, it really needs to be implemented in our communities. We need to, as a community, pull together to stem the tide of abuse among our children.
And trying to do whatever we can in order to increase their self-esteem, how they feel about themselves.
How they feel about
because
themselves.
how they feel about themselves is how they will act toward others, you see. And a bully will generally try to bully other folks, you see, because he understands that he himself is a bully and etc. And so, Pastor, we've got about a minute and 21 seconds during this last segment here. Let's see if have you got any final statements then? Perhaps we'll allow Dr. Russell to sort of close us out this morning.
Yeah, I'm just thankful that Dr. Russell is coming on here today and saying some of the things that he's saying, because he makes some valid points, especially when he talks about, you know, speaking to or actually looking for opportunities to catch the child doing something good and then compliment him, because I know you can only raise somebody's self-esteem by doing something like that and further enhance who they are and who you grooming them to be. And I just thank God for knowing Pastor Russell. Like I said, I don't have a degree, but I know some sharp, smart people.
And we appreciate you bringing us this smart man by this morning to give us some information in reference to various aspects of child abuse and neglect. I don't think that any of us have said anything that people are not familiar with, but I think that we had an opportunity to sort of bring it all together for them this morning. And I want to thank the two of you for doing that. And I want to encourage our audience to tune in again next week to another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.